Hi, my name is Nkem Okwechime. I'm an artist slash printmaker based in Glasgow, and I've been working with National Museum Scotland going through their West African collections the past year. So with support of National Museum Scotland and funding with Creative Scotland, I've been working on an installation called A Colo. A Colo is basically my alter ego that I've been playing around with recently. And it has a lot of references of Western culture and West African culture, being half Scottish and half Nigerian. What we've been really working with is going to the collections, looking at some of the artifacts that they've got there, such as Ikenga, which is an Igbo deity. First time I went, it was literally like going to Raiders of the Lost Ark and going around there. There was a whole table displayed. I asked if they could pick out some Igbo sculptures for me. Nothing specific, I really said. We had some Ikengas already on the table, maiden masks. I've been studying Ikenga since first year of uni. So this is actually then 7 years later, I've been able to see one in the flesh. And even on the second visit, I got to put the gloves on and hold them. I've always found it quite interesting. It's always very personally made for someone. So I've been looking at some of these artifacts, knowing that they personally have a spiritual connection to someone in history. It makes it very much more personal and quite overwhelming. I've been very privileged to go through to the collection centre, and I've been guided around by Dr. Zachary Kingdom, who is the senior curator of the African collection there. Just hearing the kind of spiritual connection that Zachary was explaining to me with each single piece, it was very, very like real privilege to have that moment. And yeah, it just felt really blessed to have that connection and that honest talk with someone. That's one thing, especially being a senior curator, to actually say that to as well a person of colour who's coming in to look to his own objects as well. Really appreciated that, and I feel like that's the kind of relationship we should be having, myself with the museum, and the museum should be having with the public and people. When I got into printmaking, I just didn't look back basically, and yeah, it really has put me on like maybe a more of a confident person. Looking into the research of looking into myself, I'd love to kind of reflect that into the next generation, or not even a generation, just people that are up for looking into culture or their own identity. I would like to get young people into the museum, even looking how I've done my formula of looking into my own way of making work, if it can inspire them to do something similar and them to look into themselves, whether it was culturally, environmentally wise, where they're from, whatever it is that just makes them themselves. So through this project, we've been doing workshops with Intercultural Youth Scotland. Also great to see actually West Africans that are involved, that are participating, and people from many other backgrounds as well. And that was really what I was hoping for the most, trying to introduce them into printmaking and into, I guess, my own cultural references, but as an example for them to look into their own as well. I hope it really inspired them. Okolo is basically like this character, very much Western European aesthetics, with West African masquerades like you see here as such. I feel better working with commercial masks instead of ones with spiritual purposes to an individual that might or might not still be here. It's given me a bit more of a voice to go into it, and working with the archives and blending it together. It's kind of like me and Okolo are both finding out about ourselves, you know, as it goes. I've gone with a very new approach in printmaking. A lot of mine has been very central, but now I'm doing a lot of like bleed printing, so I'm using the whole space. So it feels like even the amount of ink that I'm printing onto it feels like a painting, and even as such. And so I feel like it's definitely, even myself, I can see a lot of growth in my work. I think in a lot of this project, what I'm trying to aim, both myself and the museum, is a kind of new narrative for people with museums. I think in 2025, it's very different how we perceive them, and looking at the collections, how they got there especially. It's a very important topic that we can't just leave and just neglect, which I feel like we have in time, you know. It would be great to make sure that people who's got that cultural heritage here in the UK or in the West can feel comfortable and make it a safe space for them in there. I think sometimes it's always been a very kind of Western lens it's looked through, but I think now as how times evolved, it's now a subject that we need to kind of talk about. Sadly, we can't really change our colonial past, but I think we can definitely engage with it differently. And I feel like this installation with A Colo is my contribution to that, definitely.